Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning into the Lone Wolf Podcast. I have a special guest here today, Eric Jackaman, the host of Jackman Radio. You point out what could states do with $1 billion like a week, basically, right? Okay. The big thing, one of the big topics on the left is like Flint, Michigan's water.
Sure.
How quickly could that be fixed? Another thing that a lot of the people on the left have been pushing for, even people on the right, I think, because this could create jobs, would be infrastructure. So a lot of the people who do construction and things like that, we need our infrastructure upgrade. You know, I mean, even Bill Maher ran a segment a few weeks back talking about how much infrastructure building China has done.
And they're eating our lunch, dude.
Right. And even worse, this just shows how dumb our leaders are. Like you pointed out, and rightfully so, the reason that they conduct war is to get a hold of materials, minerals, like in Afghanistan, lithium, which, you know, something Ventura pointed out years ago.
They got trillions of lithium over there underground.
Right. And what is lithium being used in today's
batteries,
world?
Cell phones, batteries, cars.
Right.
Electric cars.
With more of a push now by a lot of progressive stuff for electric cars, good Lord, you're going to need a lot of lithium, right?
Shit, yeah.
So that being said, you know, as General Smedley Butler said, follow the money. You know, war is a racket. War is a racket, okay? So if you follow the money, you're going to figure out what's really going on here. But the Chinese have figured out a way to do it way smarter than we ever could. We're trying to get a hold of access to materials, resources, and whatnot through dropping bombs. They've gotten to the point they're not only building their own country's infrastructure,
they're buying,
but with the Belt Road Initiative, they're building up other countries.
They're buying Africa. They own Africa, India.
Right.
I mean,
and good Lord, I don't know what is one of the biggest things in Africa that the consumer market buys today, especially if you want to keep your woman happy. Diamonds. I mean, you think of like the whole blood diamond thing, right?
Female Viagra, diamonds.
Right. So literally, they're going to be getting access to all this stuff. They've laid out their game plan on how they plan to become the number one power in the world. And their way of thinking about how they plan to achieve it is way ahead of any of our old ancient politicians that have been in office since the early 1830s.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they won't step aside. They're you know, old. Some even like the report come out like last year. There certain ones that they didn't reveal who, but they're getting Alzheimer's medication. And that's who's leading our country. There's like one of the clinics up there or something. They reveal like what medication they're having to give out, and it's like a clinic used by politician in DC.
Okay, yeah,
and there's Alzheimer's medication on this list.
Jesus,
like that's who is running your country. And for anyone who's curious about what I'm talking about, I just remember hearing a little bit of it from a Secular Talk video. Kyle Kalinske actually covered the whole segment, breaking it down. Like, yeah, this is what's going on here. So you know, we've made the jokes about like, you know, Dementia Joe and all that, but it's worse than that.
There's thousands of Dementia Joes in that town.
Right.
You know?
And it's
you know, I should swim in the pool, Charles. Little black kids, you got the cockroaches in the hair of my legs. Okay, Corn Pop is a good man. Corn Pop is a good man. It's about the soul of America, Charles. Oh, I'm not wearing pants. Where am I? Yeah, man. I mean, the disconnect, man, between the clowns that we have down there in power and you and I and the rest of us is staggering, dude. Yeah. And it's only gotten worse. And, you know, look, the gangs will put in young and rising stars. They'll put in AOCs. They'll put in that fucking ghoul in the wheelchair. What's his name? Madison Cawthorn.
Yeah.
You know, they'll do that. They're their little, you know, rising stars, and their young, fresh faces. They're representing the people. They're not representing the people.
No.
Go in there, peel back a couple layers. Look who are donating to their campaigns. That's who they're serving. They're not serving you and I. That's all bullshit. That's all theater. Like Ventura says, it's wrestling. It's a show. they fight for the cameras, and then behind the scenes, they're all buddies.
And then you take AOC's case. I mean, she ran on being the outsider in the Democrat Party, and didn't she just give thousands of dollars to like Democrat insiders campaign for re-elections?
Well, I mean she had a chance when this was what was great. Jimmy Dore led the Force the Vote.
Force the Vote, yeah.
I was all in for that. What the fuck are you doing in there? You said you were going to confront the powerful and use your star power and any leverage you have to actually confront the powerful. Yeah. And when it was her opportunity to do it, and the squad and all them, they fucking laid down. They didn't do it. They didn't force a vote for Medicare for all.
Absolutely. And even worse than that is not only did you basically, agree to just bend over for Nancy Pelosi, but what did you even get out of it? She didn't even get her committee assignment.
She got a nice pat on the head. Nice job, AOC.
Pretty much. I mean,
we're gonna get you some nice Versace shoes and some Vera Wang dresses you can wear to some of our circle jerk ceremonies when I give everybody ice cream out of my nice fridge. Okay.
I told a lot of people about AOC. I was like, AOC is done with her whole, not if she ever even really started. I don't know if she ever really intended on it or not, but I never really was a fan of her anyway, personally. I felt like she always just kind of was off the rails on certain things. But for sure, I told him, like, she ain't your ally now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I really
figured out there's a lot better benefits at Capitol Hill than there are going back to bartending.
I want to like AOC, man. Like on a personal level, I'm sure I would enjoy her. I'd love to hang out with her, have some beers and talk shop. But she got in there, man. And that's what the system does to you. You can go in there an opportunist and want to shake things up and really stick it to the man and try and do big things. But the seduction and the allure of power, the allure of money, the allure of influence, of being famous, that's all powerful stuff, man. Absolutely. And since Tulsi left Congress in January, she's done some great podcasts. She was on Jocko Willink's podcast. She did Rogan, and she said, "Guys, it's like high school. You want to think that our leaders are above that and are actually mature people who want to do the business of the people. No, they behave like high schoolers and like clowns, and they're arguing and fighting, and it's a food fight." So. I've never heard AOC talk about the Federal Reserve. I've never heard her talk about the foreign wars. I've never heard her talk about, the IRS. The real stuff that is fucking over the little man and the people she purports to represent. It's all identity politics with her, man, and she's basically an actress. They have it on the right too, man. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Hitler on wheels there, Cawthorn. I keep going back to him. And look, I want to like him too, but the more you learn about him, he's a fucking ghoul too. And they're just actors. These people are actors. They don't really give a shit about anything. They have no moral compass. They have no, I don't know. They're just they're self-serving, and they're in there. I think they're in there for the wrong reasons.
I agree. And, just kind of wrap up on this, and then we'll move to another segment here. But, and I'm going to get your thoughts, give you the last word on this before we move on. But me personally, I feel like what you just described, they go after low hanging fruit that triggers emotions from people, which I think to a degree you need to do. We kind of laid out, right? You want to talk about the issues that are affecting them, but at the same time, you should really go a little more in depth and give, a little nuance and try to actually educate people, try to actually, speak about things. So when you talk about a lot of the financial problems that are going on right now, but as you mentioned, you don't mention the Federal Reserve, you don't talk about the IRS, as we touched on earlier, cutting back of laws. Me and David Spurrier, we just did a segment last week talking about the whole menthol ban. And I think a lot of people are kind of wise to that it's going to predominantly affect more black smokers than anyone else. Yeah. But as I point out, and this is something I haven't actually heard a lot of channels even focus on at all, is if you're really doing this out of a thing of public health, not that I think prohibition works anyway, but why has hookahs not even been mentioned in this conversation? Are you familiar with a hookah?
Oh, yeah. It's funny. My sister moved to DC and she got really big into hookah.
Okay,
all of a sudden she's had all these hookah lounges, and
right.
I went down one time and I smoked the hookah with her. I didn't like it, but I was like, "Well, wow, this is interesting. This is I'm up here in New England, it's New Hampshire. It's not really a thing up here. But
this is like the point that I was making to Spurrier about it. Is if this is public health, hookahs are growing in trend. First of all, there's studies out there that show kids even in middle school right now are getting possibly their hands on hookahs and smoking hookah. Okay. And I first found out about hookah. My stepdad was a Jordanian. Okay. And he smoked hookah for a while because it culturally comes from the Middle East.
Right.
And it's kind of latched on and it's got all these flavors, whatnot. He thought it was better, as do most people, because it goes through the water so it cools the smoke and it's not so hot on your lungs. Problem is, if you look up this actual studies, and a doctor told him this, and that's why he quit. The equivalent of how many cigarettes you'd be smoking, it gets bad. So just a quick search, what you'll find is 1 hour of smoking hookah is about the equivalent of smoking 40 to 400 cigarettes.
Wow.
So if it's really a public health issue here, why is that not even made its way into the conversation at all? And you can't tell me when the CDC and whatnot are getting these statistics that the politicians don't have access to them. And so in actuality, that this is Democrat administration pushing this forward under the guise of public health. When it becomes outlawed, if people try to make their own, sell their own or whatever, then it becomes illegal. Who you're going to wind up putting more in jail. So, I mean, it's nothing but a problem. So rolling those laws back, politicians need to be talking about things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Educate the voters some.
Well, I mean, the crack explosion in Los Angeles and California in the 80s and 90s, man, that decimated the Black community. And if you can educate people on the genesis of crack and drugs and the war on drugs and how it gets into our country, where it comes from, how that works, the fact that CIA stands for Cocaine Import Agency, you know, you can attach it to the menthol thing, man. That's going to impact the Black community in our country, in different communities. And then it's going to create another layer and another reason for law enforcement to fuck around with a group of people.
Right.
So that's it, man. If we can just say no more of these stupid laws,
right?
Get rid of them, repeal them. We don't need the state meddling in choices of what we put in our body and what substances we use. We're adults. We can do that ourselves. Why aren't they attacking fucking McDonald's, man? I love double cheeseburgers. You know, I'm a heavy guy. I like my doubles. Far more dangerous than marijuana and other substances. But it's not illegal to go through that drive-through, billions and billions served, like Stormy Daniels, billions and billions served. Okay. You're right though, man. It's a culture war. It's a culture war. And what the real culture war should be, us versus the state. Not all of us fighting each other. The war, the battle should be all of us versus the state. Absolutely. and the man and the long dick of the law. And we got to get to that Absolutely. Point. How we do it, man, is doing shows like this, talking to your neighbors, having conversations, having an open ear, listen to people. Be willing to listen to someone who you know you don't agree with on a lot of things, but you might find 2 or 3 things that are huge that you agree on.
Right. So moving on to another one, you know, I mentioned to you talking about kind of a debate on socialism, capitalism, or maybe a mix of both. So kind of going off of what you just said right there on then, we'll kind of start it with this. Is one thing that I've done since I've been doing this and I go on other people's shows is I've gone on channels like me and David Spurrier. Obviously Spurrier voted. He switched kind of at the last minute, wound up voting for Trump again in 2020. Spurrier is kind of more to the point now of hijack the Republican Party. I've also done videos with people like Reed Coverdale, obviously Libertarian, you know, gold all the way here. Okay. I've also gone on Big Talk, Little Talk. I don't know if you're familiar with Israel or not, but he was kind of third party guy. He switched back to Republican on another flip side of that, Frank Analysis. And he is way more on the left. Okay. And he's gotten in a lot more lately. He's been doing some great stuff growing, and he's gotten in with Steve Poikonen, Slow News Day.
I love Steve. I've been on the show a few times. He's a great guy.
Me Casa, Su Casa Network, they've all kind of joined. So he's in there with Convo Couch, Nico House.
Nico,
so he's kind of gotten into that group. So I interact with those guys a lot too. And we got to have these conversations. So I'm going to start by saying this. As much as I think this is something that needs to be talked about, we got to have a unity movement right now that represents the average person in the country, because you'd be surprised at how much we share in common with each other.
That's right.
And you've got to find a way to bring them all together. You know, Ventura said it was like trying to herd cats, but we're going to have to find a way to do it. And there's just certain issues, I think, that immediately cause debate, argument, like this being one of them. Which economic style is more preferable? There are some who believe capitalism literally leads to the basically enslaving of workers for the rich to sit up top and collect all the money. There's people who believe in a more free market, that believe that socialism is just going to lead to communism. Lenin did say it was the goal to get to communism. So there's a lot of people who think, okay, we get to that point, everyone's going to be living poor, and there'll be no freedom. If you want to hear a good kind of breakdown of that, listen to Richard Wolff versus Gene Epstein. Okay, so that's one of those issues where you get kind of into the weeds and you start to lose that unity movement. So, like in the previous thing, focus on the bread and butter. But I want to get your take. Where do you stand? Because I'll go ahead and say this. I support capitalism with certain elements of socialism. I think if you go full stop in either direction, full on capitalism or full on socialism that lead to communism or whatever, even if you just stop at quote unquote democratic socialism, I think both present their own problems. So I think, a mixture, but where do you stand?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, what you said is pretty on the money about where I'm at, but I think if you can connect it to your own life, to how it impacts your life and how it's going to impact the lives of others, and you get past the sensationalism, you get past the labels, the boxes that they want to put you in. Oh, you're a socialist, you're a communist, you're just a cold-blooded capitalist. Move past that shit. That's rhetoric. Right. That's divide and conquer.
Right.
For me, I point to, so before 2016, I didn't really have much of an opinion on healthcare and Medicare and our health system in our country. And, a life-changing event happened to me that year. My father was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer called glioblastoma, which is the same brain cancer that Beau Biden died from, Ted Kennedy, John McCain. So living in New Hampshire, my dad was self-employed. He sold cars and he was a contractor, and he had like minimal insurance. He didn't really have great insurance.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the rug's pulled out from him and our family, and he can't walk anymore. He's getting headaches. His vision's getting blurry. So we brought him to the hospital, and they found out, there's a large growth on his brain. You need to get him into a bigger hospital immediately. So, things went from 0 to 60 real quick. And the fucked up thing was, like, one of my first thoughts were, how's this going to be paid for? Like, my dad's not a millionaire. He's an everyday working man. He sells cars. He works with his hands. He's a contractor. How are we going to pay for this? Right. Which that's fucked. That's a really sad, fucked up thing. So we got him into a place called Dartmouth Hitchcock in Lebanon, New Hampshire, near the Vermont border. And we went through all those motions, all the tests, all the scans, and found out that the kind of cancer that it was. And they said, unfortunately, this is a very low survival rate. And I hate to tell you guys, your father probably has 5 months to live. And he ended up living 5 months. And it was hell. It was an absolute hell. But my dad has 7 siblings who are all still alive. My aunts and uncles, who I'm very close with. I've always been close with them growing up. And my aunt, who is an angel, who is a saint, she lives down in Massachusetts. And it was obvious here in New Hampshire with the minimal health care my dad had, he was just going to wither away in a shitty facility and get pretty good care and attention. But it would just be lots of bills and just horrible. And even my dad, this is how stoic he was about it. He was like, I'm going to die and you guys are going to get a bill. I'm sorry. So my aunt stepped up and said, let's move Tony. My dad's name was Tony. Let's move him down to Massachusetts and get him on Mass Health. So that's what we did. My aunt, she did all the paperwork. She went through everything that needed to be done, made him a Mass resident, got him out of New Hampshire, moved him down to Massachusetts, got him on Mass Health. And the last two facilities he was at, one of them wasn't so great, but the final place he was at, the hospice he was at, was amazing. The care was incredible. The staff, it was just all about keeping him comfortable and maintaining a certain comfort and quality in his last days. And that was really the first time that I personally got an up close look at our healthcare system in America and how much things cost and the devastation when you're losing a loved one like that you're going through that, but you're also being asked about bills and about insurance and it's a nightmare. So that moved me in the direction towards Medicare for all personally, because it was a personal thing that happened to me that I experienced. And I have no problem telling people that story and no problem telling them that's why I went from not really having a view on healthcare to having a view on it, and to being someone who says my tax dollars, if they're going to go towards something, have it go towards that, have it go towards that instead of blowing people up 8,000 miles away, rebuilding the bridge, then blowing the bridge up again, and then doing this all over again for 20 years. Because the thought of another family having to go through what my family went through, and having to do a GoFundMe. We do GoFundMes in America for medical bills. That's fucking insane. That's insane. You got to go online and beg people for money to try and pay some bills and live while a loved one is dying. It's totally barbaric.
Right.
So like you said, man, there has to be some kind of mix between private and public, where there can be a meshing of the two, where that it's you're not going to go tits up and bankrupt and broke because of a health emergency or having to get care.
Yeah. So I'm with you. Me and Reed have kind of talked about this some on. I know he's not necessarily such a fan of Medicare for all, but I will say I think his biggest criticism, and I do think there's some legit argument here, is that the current government we have right now would ruin it. I mean, just it's similar to the way they've done Social Security. Look what's going on with the VA. But as far as the critics who say, oh, you go on waiting lists and this and that, I take a step back and I said, okay, that's fine. I'll wait on a list if I have to. The option now is not being able to afford it. And so you just can't get it done. So, I've given like some of my personal stories, for example. I've got some issues right now with the kind of work I've been doing over the years and stuff. I've got a bad knee and I've got something going on with my neck. I'm actually probably going to be getting an x-ray done on it pretty soon to find out for sure what's going on there. I've been kind of getting prepared to try and get something done just so I know what the problem is. But I've been seeing a chiropractor to try to fix it, and it works for about a week. And then it's back to the way it was. And if I don't at least go see the chiropractor, I am miserable, because it starts from there, just goes all the way over the top of my head. My eyes feels like they're the size of golf balls. Okay. So I don't know if it's a disc that's gone bad or what the problem is, but it absolutely sucks. And the worst thing, that kind of stuff that I've had to do on my own so far are times where, say you have an accident, you can't go to the doctor. The one personal story I tell a lot of people was one day I was trying to open a box, like one of those really hard plastic packages. And so I wasn't using the best safety precautions, I guess you might say, and had a pair of scissors jump out of that box and go about that deep inside of my hand here.
Ooh.
Okay. First thought, because blood was going everywhere, was like, yeah, that probably needs stitches bad. But no insurance. So I wound up peroxide and Loctite. Put a little Neosporin on top of it, put the gauze on, wrapped it up with Ace Wrap. The good news is Loctite was such a thin type of glue that it kind of crusts. And if you peel it away, it was almost like peeling a scab. So then I could keep cleaning it that way. it sucked trying to pull that off. I mean, that is a very painful experience. You know, if you don't have to do it, I wouldn't recommend it. But I've gone through stuff like that myself, and so I tell people, look, even if you think there's a better option, Medicare for all would still be 100 times better than the system that we've got in place right now. I believe in maybe being able to have things like patents, for example, but I don't think medicine is one of those places you should be able to have. I think that's like trying to patent water. You know what I mean? There's certain things you need to survive. And I don't think someone should just be able, and I think that's a point Reed's made too about that's a problem with our system. Our companies are able to then create these drugs, putting patents on them. No one else can produce them. There's a big thing right now with the COVID vaccines. Are they going to lift the patent and be able to let other companies make generic version? Right. And the fact that they do that, they then get the autonomy to charge whatever they want. You know what I mean? And what's crazy is the people who are bought by Big Pharma justify that by then saying, well, we have to pay higher prices here so that we can continue to fund the research and development of said drugs. But when you look at the statistics, we're already paying tax dollars that do that, and they're taking on the majority of the work on the government side. The companies do a little, but if they're really having to invest so much, how are they making so many billions of dollars in profits?
Right.
So that absolutely blows that argument right out of the water.
Yeah. Well, it's greed, man. It's greed.
Yeah.
It's greed. It's valuing profit over human life. And after going through what I went through and call me a bleeding heart, you want to call me a socialist on this, that doesn't hurt my feelings. I'm a human being. Human beings, we have needs. And sometimes shit happens to us and we need help. Absolutely. And the idea of you having to come up with like $50,000 for a medical emergency is insane. It's insane. Right. In these countries, these other civilized countries who have some form of Medicare for all or a government-backed healthcare system laugh at us. They like there's great videos of the Brits. The people, say what you will about the Brits. They have terrible teeth. They're kind of, some of them are half gay, which is okay. I don't mind the gays, but you'll just have someone asking everyday Brits on the street about what they pay for X, Y, and Z related to the healthcare, insulin, medicine. Do you have a copay? They're like, mate, what's a copay? I've never even heard of such a thing. And then they're like, in America, we have insurance, but we also have what's called a copay, and then we got to pay for prescriptions. So by the end of it, something that would cost the Brits nothing, we're paying $1,000 for. Yeah. And for most Americans, dude, $1,000 is a lot of fucking money.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of money for me. I covered a video. It's by far the most watched video on my channel. Somehow this thing was able to leak around the YouTube algorithm and it took off. Okay. Nice. But it was the video about, I think his name was like Politics Joe, something like that. And he was interviewing people on the street in the UK about what did they think prices of stuff were.
That might be the video I saw then.
Right. And literally, I mean, it's like the price of an EpiPen, the price to hold your baby after you've given birth to it.
Yeah.
Like they just charge for this kind of stuff. I mean, it's absolutely, it's ridiculous. And I'm going to make one point and then I'm going to touch on something. You brought up greed. And so tying into that socialism and capitalism thing, I'm going to lay out something here in a second. But I want to say this as far as like why we need, in my opinion, why I'm not against the system like Medicare for all. As much as I think the private industry does certain things good, again, there's certain things I think that are kind of basic to having life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't believe we should privatize fire departments. Because why do I have to come up with money if my house is on fire to pay for you to come out and put it out? Like to me, what are we trying to do? Take us back hundreds of years or something here? That I like fire departments. Same thing with you could argue even in the case of law enforcement. You know what I mean? If someone broke in my house and I need an investigation done, do I have to cough up so many $100 for a detective to come out to do it?
You got to call Blackwater.
That's ridiculous. So there's certain things I think that it's good. We have the taxpayer, local funding to do such things. I think however we need to do it, we should find a way to make sure people have the ability to go see a doctor or be able to go to a hospital and not have to worry about being bankrupted. Because as you pointed out with your dad's situation there, the first thing with your mind is how are we going to pay for it? Yeah, that's crossed my mind on many of occasions. Yeah. You know what I mean? I've been fortunate enough to not have a bad injury that I had to go to a hospital. There's a few I probably should be seeing someone on right now, but I've put it off. Mm-hmm. But if that day ever comes, that's going to be right there in my head. How am I going to pay for this?
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of Americans go through. So just like earlier, we were talking about that unity thing, that strikes a chord with a lot of people. That's one of the biggest reasons people are going bankrupt in the United States today is over medical expenses. Okay. So going back to like the socialism, capitalism type of thing, you brought up greed. And I think this is, as you point out, there's a problem where capitalism, if certain checks aren't in place, can run amok. This has also been my argument for like why I don't think full-blown socialism or communism ever is going to work. The way I've had a lot of people try to describe it to me, it sounds like mob rule, like these worker co-ops where they vote on everything that they do. And I think Gene Epstein, I believe, has kind of broken this down very well, in my opinion. But to me, my biggest problem is I think whether it be it's naturally in us because of survival of the fittest or whatever, man just has a history of greed. And I've heard some people try to say greed is like the aftermath of capitalism. Why did ancient civilizations ever have war? It's not like they were practicing capitalism back in the day of like the Egyptians, right? So, I mean, you could say they had some kind of market trade or whatever, but capitalism wasn't developed as capitalism at that point. Okay. It's a thing where for survival reasons or whatever, people want more for themselves. I mean, it goes into the animal kingdom. I think there's a greed that lies inside of man. And the biggest problem that I've had with the case I've had made my direction for socialism, full blown, or communism is that when you put that power, it becomes mob rule. I don't think that people have a drive if they don't feel like they have to earn anything, first of all. Again, people are greedy. If my basic necessities completely, I'm not just talking healthcare, but like I'm going to get income regardless of how much I work. To me, I just, from my observations of our society, it would only decrease production. It would take things down. You see what I mean? But at the same time, if you go to full-blown capitalism and there's nothing there to protect workers or consumers, the people who have the power there would be doing the same thing.
Right.
Get labor as cheap as I can get
it's exploitation on either side.
Right. And so under the communism type of thing, as Gene's pointed out, to make these worker co-ops work, you would then have to outlaw anyone who doesn't want to do things that way. Like the current system would have to be outlawed because they would probably naturally be able to produce things at a cheaper price because, unions, I think, serve a role, but take General Motors, for example. At some point, unions get to run amok. Like it has started off where they want better conditions for workers. Okay, fair enough. I'm from the South. A lot of the people who were still Democrats down here, like one of my grandfathers, they're Democrat, but they're FDR Democrats. Yep. So remember like the New Deal and things like that. And that's what was kind of taught to them. And that's why that's where they're at with their thinking, like why unions are a good thing. That's what built us up. Okay. These union jobs. So the problem was they negotiated in a lot of ways better conditions, but then over time, they negotiate so much that the cost of a GM Chevrolet, if they were made out of the same materials as Toyota, would put the price so high no one would buy it anymore. You see what I mean? And so that's been a big problem there. So there's a greed in man on both sides. And that's why I advocate for that mixture of the economy. Everyone says that we would get this wealth, and I just don't know that that's true. Another thing is, if it's everything is just voted on by popular demand, as Gene pointed out, okay, how would you like to live in a world where birth control, for example, is only going to be available if the company votes to make it?
Right.
So there's definitely a case on both sides of that argument.
Mm-hmm. And, well, there's nuance.
Right. And, me personally, I feel for the people, as you point out, there's a nuance here. If you're just stuck that you have to have either complete capitalism or complete socialism, and you can't see that there could be a mix of the two, I think you're lacking the nuance in that argument. Why do you have to keep things the way they've always been taught? Take Bruce Lee, for example. Chinese martial arts was always, you have to keep it this way because it's an art form. And it was Bruce Lee who eventually said, why do we need fighting styles? Like, why shouldn't we be able to take certain elements from each thing and figure out how to put it together and make it work best for everyone? So in a current society, people, as we've seen right now, I think stimulus checks were good for a period of time. Right now, I think everything should just be reopened and people go back to work at this point. A lot of companies are starving for people. Now, why would that be? If I'm making plenty of money on unemployment, then why do I want to go out and work for someone if I'm just going to be able to sit at home and get my money?
Right.
That for anyone who wants to stand on their moral platform and preach from a pulpit of, oh, well, it's self-respect. Okay, fair enough. But let's just be honest. How many people are going to be that kind of a saint if they've got free money offered in their direction, or go bust my ass 40 hours a week and make possibly the same amount of money or maybe even less?
Yeah.
Just depends. Okay.
Right.
So there's a big argument to make there. I don't think that when people don't have that incentive to know that me going and working is what's going to put food in my mouth, that people are going to want to do it as much. I think that there's just a greed in man. It doesn't work out. But give me your take. I think we've both kind of established we like the mixed economy, but which side of the aisle do you really lean on more, and why do you lean toward that side more?
Yeah. Well, I gravitate towards people in left and right who are just tell the truth, man, who we call based.
Right.
And I've been watching a lot of Chris Hedges lately. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Yeah. Hedges is, I have a joke with my brother that guy just goes around with a bucket of ice water and just dumps it on people. And a lot of what he talks about is like just a cold bucket of ice water, but it's true. And he had a great video out it was an article. I think it was published in Mint Press News, which I read from time to time. And he just talked about sadism, that, our country, so much of our country is now just to be marketed to consumers, and it's about consumption, and it's just about getting a one-up on the next person and the acquisition of things that we don't need with money that we don't have to please people that we fucking hate,
Right.
And I think there's something to that, man. And it's a really vicious cycle that a lot of us Americans are caught up in. I'm caught up in it to some extent. I'm aware of it, and I know I'm participating in it, and I think deeper about it than I think a lot of people do. And it also boils down to consciousness. What level of where is your consciousness? Can you look at a thing like a shopping mall or Disneyland or just materialism and have it make you you have such a physical reaction to it that almost makes you want to puke, where you can step back and look at it and view it. I view it as a sickness. I view it as a mental illness. I view it as an infliction that has been perpetrated upon us as a civilization by entities that want to keep us working 1 million hours a week, that want to keep us divided, that want to keep us confused, that want to keep us scared. Absolutely. And fighting each other, while they're at the top, it's like what George Carlin says, the real owners of this place. It's not a lot of people. It's not a lot of groups. That they wanted to turn into a bifurcated argument where if you are advocating X policy, but you're advocating Y policy, you're a socialist, you're a cutthroat capitalist. And nothing ever happens. Nothing ever changes. And we're still caught in the same cycle where you can't even get to a point where you can have a nice, nuanced conversation like you and I are having right now about it, where we're not screaming and playing team baseball and jumping at each other's throats. So, I don't like labels, but I'm a humanist. I mean, if someone needs help, they need help, man. And Absolutely. I believe in helping others. And if that's in the form of just having a baseline in this country that Medicare for all is something every citizen's guaranteed, I'm all for it. And you want to help out illegals with their healthcare too, do it, man. And that's another part of the ugly culture war. And Trump played into it, the scapegoating of immigrants and illegals and all of this, all these buzzwords. It's like, dude, yeah, illegals commit crimes, citizens commit crimes, but you need to look at the real big criminals who have been fucking us forever. Wall Street, the Pentagon, the military industrial complex, the corporate oligarchy that run our country and our world that Chris Hedges talks about. Right. So there's so many things in place to keep us from peering our head up to that level and getting to that consciousness where you're like, the real power lies here, and this is where our problems can be traced to, not fighting each other, not scapegoating segments of our population. So if we can get to that level and start having dialogue on that level, then, maybe we can have a mixture of the two, which Ventura talks about, Hedges talks about. There has to be incentive for us to get up in the morning to work. That absolutely must exist, but I don't believe that goes away when you create something like Medicare for all and ensure that everybody gets health care. No. That it doesn't go away there. We're all still going to get up and go and work and do our jobs and live our lives. So
if anything, I'll say this. If anything, I think it might actually help because people have a stress relieved that they're not worried about what's going to happen to me if I go to the hospital. When you can relieve some of that stress, people then tend to be able to be possibly more energetic.
Yeah, healthier.
And lead to being more productive.
Yeah.
But one of the worst things that can happen to you is when you are mentally just so bogged down with bullshit that affects your productivity. You don't want to get out of bed in the morning because you know why? It leads to depression. It leads to a depression. And that's why why do you think over the years there have been a growing number of people who then have to go to a doctor or they go and they get on medication, for example, to have to deal with these things. There's so much shit being dumped on the American public in today's world that it leads to that, depression, that anxiety, which then in turn leads to more things like high blood pressure, shit like that too. So, I mean, it leads to a long other list of health problems. And so I don't think having anything, if they want to call it socials like Medicare for all, no. But where my thing came in was if there's no one there who can keep, say, a company in check, like let's say all the employees just take control of the company. And this is an argument I've made. First of all, people have different skill sets. Okay. Some people mentally are equipped to lead in a business. They know how to crunch numbers. They are smarter at how to market things. You have skill sets. Some people don't want to have to sit there and read books all day long and go to these meetings, and they'd rather just be working somewhere with their hands. Okay. And you take the guy who wants to work with his hands and stick him in a boardroom where he's got to be listening to this, chart be explained and vote on this and that. I think humans would eventually then do what they've done constantly over time, and that is then turn the power back over to someone else because they don't want to be bothered with such things. But one case that I've made a lot, and you brought this up with how the stuff's marketed to us in society. I'm not sure where your taste in music is at because I got a broad range. Obviously, you can tell from my wall over here, but there's a song I like to reference a lot. And I've actually covered it on my channel, Little Man by Alan Jackson. It's a country song. And this is an example I gave when I talked about the greed of people. Okay. The big thing you hear right now are how bad people like Jeff Bezos are with Amazon. And I will agree. Jeff Bezos is a slime ball. I mean, he's the richest guy right now, and he's avoiding paying taxes and actually gets tax refunds back. I mean, that's unheard of.
Sickening.
But he's found a way to do it. Okay. And so they complain about people like Bezos or the Walton family that own Walmart. Okay. But little man breaks down. He's talking about like the old Main Street, the old downtown area, you know, all the little stores. And, you know, as he talks about like a gas station, for example, old gas stations, he'd pump your gas and he'd clean your glass. Okay. One cold rain night, he fixed your flat, but a new store came where you do it yourself and you can buy lotto tickets and food off the shelf. Forget the little man. Now, here's the thing. Could these people have ever been that successful if society looked at that and said, but wait a minute, the guy that owns this little corner shop over here, he's a part of my community. You know, like he's a working guy just like me. He's not a millionaire or a billionaire. He's a man that owns this little store. He's trying to feed his family. I maybe should be giving my business to him so he doesn't go out of business and lose his home and it takes food out of his kid's mouth. What are you harming when you don't shop at Walmart? But society made a choice over time to give so much business to these massive chains that it drove so many of those mom and pop shops out of business. You know, now why would society have done that? And this is with the case I've made. There's a greed in people. Some have it worse than others, whether we truly realize it or not. But to me, I look at that as, okay, people chose to go to these stores because people enjoy one-stop shop. It's why Radio Shack went out of business and Best Buy is still around today. There's more stuff there. I can get it all at one time. I don't have to make multiple trips to do it. So, you know, small business owner on the corner, oh, well, I'll go over here. And that's a thing that's there. And so to ignore that, I think you're missing a big detail from that conversation. And so that's why, you know, I want to see capitalism, because I'm afraid when people get too much power, they just turn the power over to other people because they don't want to deal with certain things. Once you turn that power over, corruption starts to be able to leak in, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why under capitalism, you've still got the ability to create competition. And I think that's been the biggest problem right now, is where the government has gotten involved. They've actually tried to back these big, massive corporations and stifle competition. They get all that red tape in the way so that you almost can't try and create an alternative. So right now, you know, if someone wanted to launch alternatives to any of these chains, they've got almost no chance of success at all.
Yeah, cronyism, man, is alive and well.
Yeah.
Money, you know, Citizens United, money is endless, limitless money, unlimited money going into the coffers of the politicians who write the laws and offer the tax breaks to an Amazon. So it's that cycle. That cycle needs to be disrupted. And you could do that in a few ways. You could limit, you could get rid of Citizens United and have publicly funded elections. That would be great. That would shorten the election cycles. There wouldn't be these 2-year marathons that are in our face all the time.
Absolutely.
Term limits would be good because, you know, how many members of Congress does Bezos own? If you looked at his Rolodex, man, he could probably get nudes of like 50% of members of Congress if he wanted, just cause, you know, he has, he's got basically Bezos is the, you know, sole subscriber to OnlyFans of all our Congress. He's their only fan, and he dangles a few shekels and gets whatever the hell he wants. And that's sick, and it's sad, and it's what our system is. And I like the sounds of that song. I'll have to check that song out, but it's so true, man. The convenience of driving to a Walmart is there, but it goes back to consciousness. Why are we going to Walmart? What is there that we really need? You don't need anything that's at Walmart, really. Before Walmart existed, all of your needs could be met, and it could be met by supporting Ma and Pa on Main Street. So, it's a consciousness thing, man. You know, the mall, people look like zombies in the mall. You know, I had to go to the mall malls and churches. I'm not big on going to those places, but not to slag religious people, but the mall is to me is just symbolic of where so many of us are at in our society, and the only way to combat it or to get past it is to just have these conversations, is to elevate your consciousness and consider a different way. So
absolutely,
I really think that's all we can do, man. We can have the influence on the people around us, and then they'll talk to other people and maybe they'll think about things differently. So, it's great. You have your channel going here, and it's kind of what we're all trying to do.
Yeah. And one couple of things I'll add there real quick and we'll wrap this up. But talking about the Alan Jackson song, I definitely recommend going to check it out, Little Man. And I'll give you one more line from it. This is the chorus of the song, and I think this really kind of sums it up very well. Not now the court square is just a set of streets that people go around, but they never see, or never think, rather, that they never think about the little man who built this town before the big money shut him down and killed the little man.
Yeah.
So that pretty much describes it all right there. I mean, the consumer played a role too, because they had that squirrel moment. Ooh, shiny. And they went to it. But, so that being said, you definitely have to elevate the consciousness of people. These conversations are what we've got to find the way to have. You know what I mean? You got to be able to talk to people. And that's the biggest thing right now is they try to keep dividing. They don't want people to have these conversations because, as George Carlin put it, it's a big old club and you ain't in it. If
you ain't in it.
People ignorant and fighting, they will never be able to come together and organize anything, really. They argue over small little details here and there. Which philosopher had this economic style better?
Yeah.
Right. You get into these, arguments and it just it's no good. It's just simply no good. So that's my thing, and as you point out, like even in the case of churches, people have to start learning to look beyond, the stuff that's thrown at you, and I will say this, I am a Christian, but I heard a guy say one time, I like Christians. I don't like religious people.
I like that.
I don't like Bible thumpers. Okay. The concept that I have to go to a church to sit through this, theater and get up, and after everyone sat there and sang all these kumbaya songs and listened to a sermon, go outside and the old women start gossiping about the others. Like, really? You just went through this whole thing about, how great the Lord is. We're all children of the Lord. And then you go outside and talk shit about each other.
By the way, Charles, I want 10% of your paycheck.
that too. Also, the pastor can go buy a new Cadillac. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I will say this. I will give credit to one man, one pastor that I know of who got a vehicle from the church. And I have to say he probably actually did something fucking useful with it. Okay. When I was a kid, the church I went to is a guy named Charles Bishop. He's been dead for years, Reverend Charles Bishop. But the church always provided him a van, not just a car, but a van. But what did he do? He had a reputation of people who wanted to come and didn't have vehicles. He picked them up and would bring them, first of all. But he traveled. Like when he wasn't in church, or if he wasn't at that church on a Sunday or whatever, it's because he was at somewhere else. He would visit people in the hospitals. He would visit people in prison. I mean, the man did it well into his 80s until he finally died. And so at least he took what the church gave him vehicle-wise and tried to do something with it that's useful, to go out to see people who are, in bad shape in the hospital, go visit people in prison and possibly give them at least some kind of hope or something. Agree with whether it's real or not. For a lot of people, just having that spiritual, being that philosophy helps them turn into a better person to try to live a better life.
If you buy into Christ, that's pretty Christ-like behavior, man. I tip my hat to him for that.
That's it. So, but after he passed, the person who then took the job after him, he got a vehicle too from the church, and it was a F-150. And the most traveling he did with groups of people was when he took his family out in it to go camping, fishing, things like that.
Sure.
So, you know, I don't agree with the concept of going to this thing just to donate to the vehicle fund for someone to go live comfortably.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you say that. A lot of my friends are hardcore Christians, and a lot of them have been saying the same thing you just said to me. I'm not a big fan of religions and having to go to a church, but I consider myself a Christian, and I have a relationship with Jesus, who I believe in, and you know, I give a lot of respect to people who do that and they walk that walk. When my father was sick, there's a local church in my neck of the woods. Some of the members are people I've known for over 20 years. I grew up with, and you know, they knew what was going on and put together care baskets with gift cards and things and nice and brought them by the hospital. And then when I, you know, had to close my dad's home down and we had to sell it, one of the members of the church showed up with a moving van and helped us do it, helped us lug everything out of the house and load it into the truck and then store it for a few months.
Right.
And, you know, obviously free of charge, and they just did it. They did it because it was the right thing to do. And so if they're a model, if that behavior is being modeled after a belief in Jesus and that's what compels them to do it, and they believe that that's right, and it's totally done without measure, I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
And on the other side of that coin, you know, I consider myself probably atheist, agnostic. I don't believe in God or have a religion, but I do all those things in my life and walk that walk because I also believe it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
So, you know, we got to get past arguing with each other and having these labels and saying, oh, just because I'm an atheist and you're a Christian or you're this and that, we can't be friends and we can't come together for the betterment of humanity, because we absolutely can. And it's done every day. It's just you don't hear those stories enough. So
yeah, for sure.
That's awesome, man.
It's been a good conversation. We're going right at about an hour and a half here now, so gonna wrap it up. But go ahead and plug yourself. Tell everyone where they can find you at. I'll be posting the links, obviously, in the description box below. But let everyone know what you've got going on, where they can find you at to hear more from you. And I've enjoyed this. I hope you'll come back on the channel again sometime. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have you on too. This has been great, man. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm on YouTube at Jackman Radio. I'm on Instagram. My personal Instagram's Senator Jackman. So come on there, say hi to me. I'm totally addicted to the algorithms on Instagram. Twitter, Jackman Radio. Facebook, Jackman Radio. And we have a Patreon. We just ask people for $5 a month if they like our videos and the interviews that we do. You know, the money we use from that is we want to fly some big name guests in New Hampshire, have them in studio, interview them, put them up in hotels. So all that shit costs money. A lot of the time we do it all out of our own pocket, but every little bit helps. And I would just say to everybody watching, you know, I appreciate you tuning in. Obviously, you're thinking about things deeply if you're checking out the Lone Wolf podcast. So, you know, I appreciate what you're doing, Charles. And this has been a great convo. And check us out and elevate your conscience and be thankful for every day we get here, because I think every day is a gift, and it's a beautiful life. You can make your life really beautiful and the lives around you. So rock and roll. Yeah, for sure. Well, I like to say, I thank you for coming on. You're welcome back. And if you haven't yet, he just told you where to find him. Go give him a subscribe. Go follow him. I mean, Eric's a great guy. This has been a great conversation here, and we need more of this. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Drop your comments in the comment box below. We will see you next time here on the Lone Wolf Podcast. Take care, guys.